The Cleveland Cavaliers were able to flip the script against the Charlotte Hornets and turn out a very dominant home win. Hear about how they were able to pull this off on today's Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Hey guys, how's it going? Evan Dammarell here, one of the co-hosts of Locked On Cavs, flying solo as my co-host Chris Manning is in the Big Apple, doing work for the New York Knicks in some subterfuge before the playoffs begin. But before we talk about the Cleveland Cavaliers' dominant win over the Charlotte Hornets, I have to let you know that this episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Just go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA and use code all lowercase LockedOnNBA for your first deposit match up to $100. So, in this game against the Charlotte Hornets, the Cleveland Cavaliers were certainly reeling a little bit. For those who listen to Monday's show, I described their performance the night before against the Miami Heat as a bag of suck. Shout out to 2006 Enjoy Skate video Bag of Suck for just forever being planted in my brain and just putting those words together for me. But you know what didn't suck? How the Cleveland Cavaliers turned the table against the Hornets. So it's pretty clear when you look at Charlotte, one of their biggest weaknesses is that big man. It's been that way since Big Al was playing center for them. Was the last time they really had like an all-star caliber big man. And that's back when they were the Bobcats, not the Hornets. So in this matchup against Charlotte, the Cavs were able to take the head off of the Hornets for a hot second defensively when they connected on a alley-oop pick and roll between Jared Allen and Darius Garland. They're bread and butter. I think a great way to kind of set the tone. But you notice pretty quickly that the Cavs were settling for shots because the Hornets had more or less walled off the interior and kind of dared Cleveland to beat them with their shooting, whether it's long twos or it's, ill-advised shots on the perimeter. But I asked JB Bickerstaff about it post-game, and it really crystallized it. But the Hornets just made a concerted effort to get the ball out of Darius Garland's hands as quickly as possible and force it into their bigs, who were then getting walled off in the interior, who were then trying to kick out to guys on the perimeter that maybe weren't getting them in the spots they're typically used to, whether that was from Evan Mobley or Jared Allen. But flip the script after going 13% from three-point range in the first quarter to the second quarter, where the Cavs just go absolutely bombs away from the perimeter. They go 7-10 from beyond the arc, and they just completely blew Charlotte's defensive game plan wide open. And more importantly and more impressively, were able just to kind of impose their will all over the floor offensively. And the game never really felt like it was out of reach for the Cavs. Like, from wire to wire, there were moments when Brandon Miller and the Hornets made things interesting for Charlotte, but it just felt like the Cavs are never really losing control. And to me, that's just, the signs of, yes, this is the team that's licking its wounds. Clearly, they are trying to get through the dull times of March in this time of the basketball season and just try to get healthy as possible, which we'll touch on that a little bit more in regards to Max Strus, Dean Wade, and Donovan Mitchell. I actually have a personal update that I got myself on them, so keep listening. But just focusing on this game, it really just unlocked so many things, and it just made life more conducive, much easier for Cleveland. I think it certainly helps that the Hornets aren't a good team. They are the 29th ranked overall offense in the NBA heading into this matchup. I'm morbidly curious to see if them or the Pistons or even the Wizards are at rock bottom after tonight's games wrap up. But Charlotte was pitiful in this game. You have to really feel bad for the situation there, but there's no LaMelo Ball for them. They do have Brandon Miller, who's very exciting, but the Hornets are a work in progress, and the Cavs showcased what good teams do against bad teams, where they can kind of flip the switch and just put them away pretty quickly. And you saw that in the second quarter, where the Cavs were just absolutely throttling Charlotte on the perimeter, and then they allowed them to open up the inside attack. And then you saw that this wasn't just like the Cavs playing heavy isolation or just kicking it down to a big man and letting a big man post up and post, dribble. Instead, it was more so the fact that Cleveland just kind of kept the ball moving, and they were finding a lot of an offensive rhythm that has been lacking for the last few games. And I mean, the numbers speak for themselves. That 91.1% of Cleveland's made field goal attempts were the product of a pass that resulted in an assist. And people who will, be a little bit too critical will point out to the fact that like Darius Garland didn't score in double figures, but Garland was the head of the snake in this matchup, in my opinion, where he was just really dominant for the Cavs all over the floor and just providing them the playmaking and, just being very comfortable not having to shoulder the entire load offensively in terms of scoring, instead just relegating to his teammates and passing to them and getting them involved instead, so that he doesn't have to do everything all at once just to carry the load. And more like Samwise Gamgee, Darius Garland was able to share the load. Editor Jake, if you could put that in slow motion and like superimpose my lips like faded like Sam, really would appreciate that. But either way, this was just a flat out dominant performance. I think a really good palate cleanser for Cleveland too. You can tell just the mental fatigue that comes with traveling all the time, or just like what the Cavs have been dealing with in general lately, with just when it comes to like the injuries and everything else that they've just kind of have to put up with. But this is just encouraging if you're Cleveland. This is something you'll take any day of the week if you're the Cavs, because they had lost 3 in a row heading into this one. They're off the heels of a very, very, very frustrating and frankly pitiful loss to the Miami Heat. And this is a good tone setter and a good way to kind of keep building momentum, especially when now the Cavs have to go to Charlotte and face a Hornets team, that is, I believe, just as bad as they are at home than they are on the road. But regardless, like the Cavs should be able to take care of business no matter who they have or who they don't have, because a player that really stood out in this matchup to me and was the X-Factor wire, other than Jared Allen, who was very, very good in this game, was Evan Mobley, who had a career-defining night and really showcased his capabilities and the kind of the player that we all expected him to be. But we'll talk about that in a hot second, because got to pay them bills, and I got to give you a quick word from today's first sponsor. Today's episode of Locked On Cavs is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is America's #1 fantasy sports app with over 3 million members. They're the easiest and most exciting way to play DFS, and it's just you against the numbers. You pick more or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. It's demon time on PrizePicks. You can win up to 100 times your money with as little as 4 correct picks. You can turn $10 into $1,000. Demons and Goblins are the newest and most exciting way to play PrizePicks. Squares marked with red demons or green goblins get you different payouts. You can win up to 100 times your money and as little as 4 correct picks, and you'll be gobbling these wins all season long. For example, you could pick Anthony Davis for more than 2 blocks and Damian Lillard for 4 3-pointers made, or Luka Doncic for 32 points and LeBron James for more than 7 assists. If you're feeling funky and you're feeling like a real goblin, Kevin Durant for more than 28 points and Trae Young for more than 10 assists. Why the heck not? Just go for it. And if you're interested, go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNBA. That's all lowercase. Use code LockedOnNBA in lowercase for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's just that easy. Check out PrizePicks today. So, Evan Mobley. I would say one of his best games this season overall. It's kind of hard to maybe take full stock of it because this is the 39th or 40th game Mobley has played for Cleveland this season. But overall, like very, very impressive. A career high 8 assists, which I can do the number crunching as we talk here, but like was a very big product of just Cleveland running and facilitating and just, functioning the entire offense through Evan Mobley. So like for one of the assists, 3 points. Another one of the assists, 2 points off of a Darius Garland layup. 3 points again, so that totals you to 8. And then you see Evan Mobley get another 2, that's 10. And this is just in the fourth quarter. We're jumping back to the third quarter. You have another 2-pointer, so that's 12. A 3-pointer in the second quarter, that's 15 off an Isaac Okoro 3. You have a 3-point shot off George Niang. That's another 3, so that makes, I believe, 21, which is 9 plus 10. And then finally, towards the end of the first quarter, Sam Merrill made one of the few 3-pointers off of an Evan Mobley assist. But this is just a clear indicator that like Evan Mobley was the offensive hub. He was feeling himself. He did say like he just kind of was just making the right plays and just trying to move the rock and facilitate as much as possible. But Evan Mobley really did showcase a lot of what people were hoping for in terms of just being that do-it-all big man who can be a two-way wrecking force and also just the best player for the Cavs and be a really nice complement to a fully healthy Donovan Mitchell if this level of play just continues, and especially just into the postseason, because if the Cavs have a locked-in Evan Mobley who is moving the rock, taking three-pointers, crashing the glass, defending guys on the perimeter or in isolation, and also just rotating to defend the paint, like, the Cavs will have a incredibly scary thing on their hands, and the best player in the draft, his respective draft class, in Evan Mobley, that could make or break a playoff series for them. And would be a really nice palate cleanser just after how poorly he played against the Knicks last year in the playoffs. I was just really impressed with how dominant Mobley was from wire to wire. He did this again. I should make this clear, like in 24 minutes and 56 seconds of action, he got most of his burn when the game really got out of hand, but was still making winning plays and impact no matter who was on the floor with him. But yeah, I think, having the Hornets for one game and then having them again is a great way to kind of build momentum and kind of keep things rolling. And just more impressively, like, Mobley was really, really good in this game. And I think that cannot be underrated or understated just because the Cavs have struggled mightily defensively. They've struggled mightily offensively. I believe heading into the Miami game, they were 18th overall in points scored and 18th overall in points allowed per game. Post All-Star break, which, is not great if you're the Cavs. You pride yourself on defense and let that be the tone setter. And ever since his rookie season, Evan Mobley has been the catalyst for the Cavs in that department and has just been the key difference maker and contributor for Cleveland, empowering them to be a defensive juggernaut, empowering Jared Allen to be arguably in the Defensive Player of the Year conversation if you really want to get funky with it, or the all-defensive conversation if you really want to get funky with it. And just, doing all the little things, where it's like JB Bickerstaff puts it, make winning plays, where it's not about Mobley putting up as many garbage shots as possible or putting up as many empty calorie stats like Scotty Barnes does with the Toronto Raptors. Instead, Mobley is looking to make the winning pass, the winning play that may not be counted on the statistical chart because he's just so hyper-focused and obsessed with winning that it's just kind of always been his MO from the day he came to Cleveland. Like, let us not forget that the Cavs were an absolute bottom feeder. JB Bickerstaff even admitted in Mobley's rookie season they didn't really expect to kind of be as good as they were right away. And I think a lot of that can be attributed to Mobley. And yeah, sure, the Hornets aren't great, but they were tied with the Cavs entering the second quarter. They did make it interesting, even though I did say the Cavs were kind of keeping them arm's length away, but that's because Evan Mobley was on the floor for them, just locking things down on defense, taking his time, defending different opponents, whether it was Miles Bridges or Brandon Miller, or taking time against like Nick Richards or Alexei Pokusevsky, or even Grant Williams, who Grant Williams is he's a funny guy. He's just a funny little guy. Well, we'll just leave it at that. But clearly, like, Evan Mobley was given a myriad of assignments, mostly bigs between 4s and 5s, but handled them all in stride and kind of looked like a player who hasn't missed 32 games so far for the Cavs and also didn't sit for 9 games and just play in an absolute drubbing against the Miami Heat the night before. Like, he looks like a guy who has been one who was on a minutes restriction tonight against Charlotte, but looks comfortable in what the Cavs are trying to do on either end of the floor. And interestingly enough, like, Mobley shared that this has just kind of been the biggest struggle for him this season. Is just like he's never really been away from basketball this long. Like, he's always just used to constantly playing and honing his craft and improving, and having basketball more or less be taken away from him was kind of like a cruel punishment, just because you don't have control over injuries, whether it's what happened with his knee or the ankle sprain that he suffered against the Celtics, or just really anything in between. But Mobley was just really, really good in this game, and I think it can't be understated that he shared that while he was away, he didn't let it get him down too much. He was focused on his recovery. I think we all know that he has a healing factor of an X-Men, or an X-Man, but it's just more so the fact that he said he quietly studied and sat on the bench and obviously was involved just watching the team and figuring out, like, okay, this is like a really big strength of ours. Ours is in Mobley speaking for the Cavs and saying that, like, how can I accentuate this and make it even better than it already is? Or maybe there's some clear weaknesses where Evan Mobley's like, okay, I have to come in and kind of do this a little bit differently, or, oh, there's a clear need for this and I can provide exactly that, or, hey, Jarrett or I guess George at this point, just because Dean Wade is out, or even Tristan Thompson or Damian Jones are being asked to do things maybe they're not quite comfortable with, because that's something I, as in Evan Mobley, would do personally just when I'm on the floor. And so looking at it now, like, it was a crystallization and a lot of a catalyst where, like, Evan Mobley can give you that two-way impact, and he's always giving you that defensively. But as the Cavs ride this really unfortunate injury wave that they've been kind of just washed and dragged out the shore with every single time this season, Mobley can kind of just be the calming presence like he was his rookie season, where the Cavs can maintain that defensive first approach. But more excitingly, and just like on a more fun level, like, now that Mobley is really showing his chops as the player we expected him to be entering year 3, and it took a while, but like, you see the flashes of it at least. The defense, like, if you're watching on YouTube, my arm is way up here, but the offense is slowly creeping up and starting to go off screen to match my other arm at that same level, because Evan Mobley is just showing that elite two-way impact that can easily be the best player on the Cleveland Cavaliers, regardless of whether or not Donovan Mitchell is here long-term or this happens to be his last or second to last season in Cleveland. But this was a phenomenal game for Mobley. I'm excited to see what he does against the Hornets on Wednesday, especially with the day of rest, because the Cavs are off on Tuesday because of playing a back-to-back. But we'll see what he does on Wednesday, against the Hornets. And then we'll see how he performs Friday against the Sixers, and then has a bit of a road trip coming up. But speaking of that road trip, it's not just, the mountain high air or, the seat of the earth the Cavs might be able to enjoy when they're out in Denver or Salt Lake City. Well, they can't enjoy anything in Salt Lake City. Phoenix or Los Angeles. The Cavs might be getting some reinforcements based on what I was told pregame against Charlotte. But before I tell you about that, gotta give you a quick word. One of today's sponsors. Today's episode of Locked On Cavs is brought to you by BetterHelp. Sometimes we all need the opportunity to get something off our chest. Big or small, certain things can really start to get to you. It's important to let that out, especially to someone who's unbiased in your life. Therapy can be different for everyone. Most of us have bigger problems than our favorite sports team, and it is important to get the things off your chest every once in a while. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible, and suited to your schedule. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp. BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. And we are back. As I have mentioned several times, I'm Evan Dammarell, one of the co-hosts and voices behind Locked On Cavs, the first Cleveland Cavaliers podcast to feature real human voices. Suck it, Chase Down. But heading into this game, everyone was asking JB Bickerstaff about the loss to the Heat or the dissolving of the NBA G League Ignite program. And I was able to get a question in towards the end of his availability and just asked him. And I had to frame this carefully, because if I were to ask JB straight up, how are Max, Donovan, Dean doing? You would get, and this is to JB's credit, that they're just progressing, because Bickerstaff is a coach that will never put a firm timetable on a player, because that's incredibly irresponsible. You don't want to let it be publicly known that a player is coming back at this date or time, because then that creates public pressure and expectations that maybe rush them back sooner than expected. And you really just have to trust the player's body, and also just make sure that they pass certain benchmarks for the Cavs, which is usually just being able to practice and also just showcasing that you can maybe handle a full 20 to 25 minutes on the floor for Cleveland as they ramp up your production and help you shake off that rust and get you back into the fold. So I really mulled over the question a bit, and I framed it this way. I said, JB, between the injuries, and I'm paraphrasing a little bit, between the injuries to Donovan, Dean, and Max, and the fact that there is 10, 11 games left in the regular season at this juncture, do you expect them to return to the floor during the regular season to shake off some of that rust to help the ramp up towards the playoffs? And I'm going to read in full what Bickerstaff said to me, so that everyone has a full understanding of it and there is no mincing of words or misunderstandings after the fact. JB said to me, and I quote, "We're hopeful. I believe they will all be back in time to play some games, getting the group an opportunity to play some games together. We've got some tough road games coming up, and I think there will be great tests for us and great opportunities for our guys to be back on the floor and get that kind of feeling of playing in an adverse environment. Those types of things we're focusing on right now are health and habits, right? We need our guys, obviously, to take care of themselves and get healthy. But then we have to continue on focusing on the habits that are going to make us successful. So to me, that doesn't mean you'll see Dean Wade or Max Strus or Donovan Mitchell or all three of them or part of them come back Wednesday against Charlotte or Friday against Philly. To me, that reads possibly Sunday on Easter when they play the Nuggets, or when they play the Jazz soon after that, or when they play the Suns, or maybe when they visit Los Angeles to wrap up that road trip to play the Lakers and then the Clippers 2 nights in a row. So there's opportunities for the Cavs to bring these guys back. I think it is paramount for the Cavs to bring these guys back at this point because, I mean, cripes, look at Evan Mobley. He is still going to be rusty. I think he's still not like at 100% fully, but he's looking much better and much more comfortable because he's not coming in completely cold to a situation just like with the postseason women. He has these opportunities in the regular season to shake off the rust, kind of regain his wind and his rhythm on the floor that you can't quite match even if you aren't, or even if you are doing like full-blown cardio constantly. Like you can't match the level of production or just the quality and intensity of in-game reps quite like you can. So you need those opportunities for guys like Strus, who has missed a ton of games at this point, or Mitchell, who hasn't played since the Cavs played the Pelicans and then the Rockets, and then he was shut down again because his knee just wasn't responding the way he hoped it would. Or Dean Wade, who was gone for several games for the birth of his child, and then had a knee issue flare up on the injury report that has kept him sidelined for several games now. So you want these guys to have a rhythm and rotation. You see it with Evan Mobley. I think it's going to be easier for Donovan Mitchell. I think it's going to be a little bit easier for Strus just because they kind of have either defined roles or just or the style of play where they will get the ball in their hands and plenty of opportunities to get up shots to just kind of make life a lot more palatable and a lot more enjoyable for them and the Cavs overall. But even a guy like Dean Wade, I think, is going to be a key role player for the Cavs come playoff time. Like, he has the ability to defend and play 3-4 and even small ball 5. He rebounds. He is pretty good defending laterally, and also he just provides you that perimeter shooting and scoring. And you want him in a rhythm and a little bit of a flow so that he can really give you meaningful minutes, even if it's 10 or 15 most nights in the postseason, or spot opportunities where maybe he can be a bit of a spark for you when the Cavs need something. But you'd rather have a guy that is not ice cold coming to that situation, and that's what ideally matters the most if you're the Cavs. You want these guys 100%. And like I said, Bickerstaff wasn't going to put a firm timetable on them, but he's hopeful and he believes. I think are the two big things. Like, he did kind of give some insight in his answer in saying that there is hope and a belief that they will play on this upcoming multi-game road trip that the Cavs are about to take, so that they can get Donovan Mitchell, Max Strus, Dean Wade back into the fold, get them a little bit more comfortable. And then in turn, when the Cavs do have some time off because of the play-in tournament and the ramp up to the playoffs, they can really use those practice opportunities that they don't get at this point in the year to really start drilling in the concepts and schemes that they want to utilize against whomever they draw in the playoffs, whether it's at this point New York, if it ends up being like a 4-5 matchup somehow, but I doubt that, or it's like Orlando or Indiana, or if they go back higher up on the list, they have to deal with Miami or another scary team like that. So this is a very critical time for the Cavs. It's obviously not ideal, but if you're Cleveland, and with all the injuries and just some of the crap you've dealt with all season long, you have to take what you can get. And if you're able to get these guys back sooner rather than later, and they're able to shake off the rust, probably play with the minute restriction, and just get fully comfortable for the postseason, that's what matters most. We'll touch on this more on Wednesday's show, of Locked On Cavs, but since I'm going solo, I'm going to open up the mailbag. I'm going to ask you guys to drop some questions. If you drop them in the YouTube comments below, you will get priority. I promise you that. I'll be announcing it on Twitter or the dumb platform known as X as well. But Wednesday's show will be a mailbag. And then after the Hornets game, I'll be joined by my subordinate / Cavs writer Jackson Flickinger from Right Down Euclid to talk about the Cavs versus the Hornets, and also just kind of get you geared up for the remainder of Cleveland's week as we just keep working through this day by day, just like the Cleveland Cavaliers are. But until then, I'm Evan Dammarell. This has been Locked On Cavs. Have fun, stay safe, and until next time, go Cavs.